Hello, my little wine introverts. Welcome back to the Introvert Wine Podcast. We're back to business after the summer break. I hope you all enjoyed your summer and full of energy, back to business. I did some short breaks here and there, and I will be speaking about them later on. So, for some of us, the summer has started with the stage one assessment, Form W. All my fellow Master Wine students waiting for our results. All the best to all of us, all the patience, all the luck. We'll get there. It's going to be okay. So, as a natural topic, because I imagine all of you had done some travel during the summer, I decided to speak about wine tourism. And I have been actually waiting for a very long time to explore this topic because I did a master degree in wine tourism, but I'll let you in on a little secret. I never worked in tourism, so I can only speak from my studies and some personal experiences because my Instagram is called Travel the Wine, so I do travel a bit for wine, but I needed someone who worked in tourism, who actually has organized trips and events, and I wanted this person to have a very diverse background because wine tourism is very diverse and it's developing so fast that I wanted the person to have a view on different countries, different regions, different stages of tourism. And I was lucky enough to have a person with specialty in gastronomy tourism, which is my favorite. So why wine tourism? Why are we speaking about wine tourism when wine consumption is in decline? Vineyards are declining, but a lot of regions, a lot of producers, and a lot of wine regions are turning their heads to tourism as a way to stay afloat. Because you can believe it or not, but according to Vinitor, the 2023 global wine tourism market estimated at approximately $46 billion, and it's projected to reach $100 billion by 2030. And that means that we are traveling more, we are spending more, and maybe it's an aftermath of the pandemic. You remember when we all hit rock bottom and were stuck in our homes? So now we are traveling like crazy, and tourism is growing back and in a faster rate, but also in a different way. So we'll speak today about wine tourism, what it is, who are wine tourism. Maybe you can classify yourself what type of wine tourist you are, and we will try to dissect it on the examples of regions we're familiar with, and I will keep you know more. Let's dive into the episode. I'm very happy and very excited to welcome my good friend Zhanar to our podcast, who has amazing background in tourism professionally with so many countries like Italy, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Georgia. And I really love you to introduce yourself and speak about, your career, your experiences, especially in connection with wine and gastronomy tourism, Zhanar.
Hello, Ksenia. Hello, everyone. My name is Zhanar Nurlybek. I'm journalist and I'm a organizer of gastronomical tours and events. I lived in Ukraine, in Georgia, and in Italy, and now in Kazakhstan again. Yes, I always said that everything connected with gastronomy, with restaurants, with food, with wine, it was just hobby for me. And only in this year I understood that no, it's not hobby. It's very big part of my life. And now I'm working in this industry more seriously. But yes, when I lived in Ukraine and Georgia, I made food and fashion tours to Kiev, to Tbilisi, and I made some interesting program in Rome, in Italy, in Venice. And last year I back to Kazakhstan and I worked for our government, for major of city. I work at tourism board, Almaty Tourism Bureau. We promoted Almaty as a touristic destination. So I was PR manager and curator of gastronomical projects altogether.
Yeah, it's a very curious topic for me, and I wanted to do this episode on wine tourism, on gastronomy tourism, overall, kind of on food and experiential tourism for a long time now. And I see that globally it's quite a hot trend, and there is a lot of interest in more valuable, in more experience-oriented travel and tourism, and a certain boom in gastronomy tourism as well, and maybe more so in the countries that are more in their phase of emerging as tourism destination, like you mentioned, like Georgia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan. And it was really interesting to dig into this and to explore some of our experiences, some shared stories with you, some I don't know, fun jokes to exchange about this topic. And overall, to speak, is there wine tourism? What is it? Does it exist? Who are these people who are wine tourists? Who can we kind of try to classify as wine tourists? And then obviously share our real life stories because we've lived and traveled quite extensively, both me and you, in more classic wine regions like Spain, Italy, France, and emerging regions like you said, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Georgia, because I think there can be some similarities, but there's also quite a lot of distinctions in at what stage of tourism development we are. So I'll start with two definitions of what wine tourism is considered. So the first one is by the World Tourism Organization, and they speak about wine tourism as a subtype of gastronomy tourism when you include visits to vineyards, wineries, some tastings, buying wine at the source. So that's one way to look at it. And there is a broader academic definition that includes culture, food, festivals, landscapes, and hospitality. So in both cases, I see that wine tourism is considered more than just wine. Zhanar, would you agree with this? Or do you have your own understanding, description, or a definition of what for you is wine tourism?
No, I am absolutely agree with it. I think that wine tourism is a subtype of gastronomy tourism because wine couldn't be without food, without some appetizers. You can't go to vineyard and just drink wines. And, so it's always some food pairings, some dinners with wine or wine with some appetizers like, I don't know, Italian aperitivo. So for me, yes, it's subtype of gastronomy tourism.
Yeah, and there, in a lot of cases, like you said, there is a lot of cultural immersion, like in history, in local tradition, and architecture. Because if you go to Italy, probably wine would be, even if you are not a wine lover, even if you don't go to Italy for wine experiences, but it will be for sure included because that's their culture, that's the way it's organized. And yeah, it's really fun to try to classify when I am part of wine tourism or not. Because, for example, if I go to Champagne, if I go to Reims, to the center, to the capital of Champagne, and I don't visit a vineyard, is it considered wine tourism? If I just go there for, I don't know, for a work meeting or something, because I'm technically in a wine region. Or the opposite. For example, me and you, we had a very fun road trip to San Sebastian in Spain with our little Kazakh mafia in Toulouse. And we didn't go there specifically for
For food.
wine. Yeah, we just wanted to have, I don't know, to see a new city and to have fun there and to enjoy the weather and each other's company and celebrate a birthday. But in the end, I think our couple of days there were very gastronomy connected because we were enjoying the city and it's such a big part of the city, enjoying the offer, the culture, and it feels very natural that in this way I would consider us probably gastronomy tourists in a way. But in your experience, because you haven't worked with wine directly when when you lived in Ukraine, Georgia, and Italy, but in your experience, is there a difference when people come for a wine experience specifically, or they just come into the destination, come to Tbilisi, for example, and then it comes very naturally because it's part of culture code of the country?
Good question. It was very natural because Georgia now has promotes itself as a homeland, motherland of wine culture. So everybody who come to Georgia, they drink wine. It's not. It was very very natural, and also both in Georgia and in Ukraine, I made food and fashion tours because both of this country are famous for fashion, and people who come in my tours, they was fashion lovers and also food lovers and wine lovers. Ukraine also was very natural because I think it's a Slavic country, and I think Slavic and European countries maybe it's like stereotype, but people think that it's countries that drink sometimes maybe a lot wine. So it was very natural. But it was very funny about Kazakhstan because Italy also, when tourists come to Italy, they drink. They drink wine, Aperol, Spritz, Huga, I don't know, Prosecco. But when tourists or gastronomical journalists came to Kazakhstan, they didn't know that we have some of vineyards and wine production, wine brands, cognac, cider, and everybody was very surprised. And also, I think it's because people think that Kazakhstan is Muslim country, but it's not like that. Kazakhstan is officially not a Muslim country, let's say. And people very surprised that we have a lot of good wine. So it's very funny. And now I like that our local sommelier and the local chefs started to do some food pairing local wine with local products. For example, horse meat, cheese, Kurt cheese. So it's very interesting. Now a lot of beer brands we have. So we have everything in Kazakhstan, and it's very funny and very interesting for tourists who come to Kazakhstan because they don't think that they can find wine here, local wine here.
No, absolutely. The amount of questions I have, even from my professional wine or sommeliers that ask, is there wine in Kazakhstan? This is still hilarious up to date. I understand why it's not naturally in their head, but also, for example, I think there is the same stereotype about Ukraine that it's not directly connected with the production of wine, though it has been historically there. There's some good wines, they're very famous, but people mostly associate it not with wine, but I mean with other drinks or with other gastronomy features. But it's nice to see how it's changing and developing step by step. But I'm very curious because what I want to do is a little exercise in kind of profiling and classifying the wine tourists. So how can we understand who are, let's say, the target audience, who are the people that can be described as wine tourists. And I have the classification that's, I guess, it's most common one that's adopted, I guess, also by the tourism organization, that there are more or less 3 to 4 main types of wine tourists. So the first one are wine enthusiasts and connoisseurs. So these people travel specifically for wine. So they would plan their whole vacation itinerary around wine. So they will visit wineries, master classes, cellar access. They will be like planning around the whole trip, planning around their wine experiences. There are more chill, relaxed kind of lifestyle experiential tourists that they will combine wine with their whole experience, with the nature, with culture, with wellness, with obviously Instagram some nice picture moments, but they will not be upset if they cannot schedule a visit to a winery for one day. They will still enjoy the region. And then they're very casual visitors. So if they're driving by, if they're in the region and there is an opportunity to see a winery, to do a tasting, or I don't know, to do some activity around it, they will do it, but they will not be so deeply focused. They will, again, not include it on purpose, but it will be a nice kind of add-on if it's available. And also there is another division, is the domestic and international wine tourists. So because they will differ, I guess, greatly if you're visiting your home region, your country as a wine tourist, and then if you go internationally, then I guess your behavior and spending also differ. So I will not hide it. I will clearly be in the first category of wine enthusiasts and connoisseurs, because I believe most of my travel is focused on wine or gastronomy at some account, because I've been in July to 2 short trips. One was in Sardinia and I had a winery visit each day, even though I tried to relax and enjoy the time off and explore Sardinia. For me, that was such a big part of Sardinia, is enjoying its wines and understanding its history around it, the varieties, the styles of wine they make. And then I went to Edinburgh, and obviously that was not a wine trip, but again, I booked a visit to distillery because for them it's not wine, but it's the whiskey or gin is such a big part of their culture code and gastronomy that I would also consider it, in my case, a gastronomy or like beverage tourism or whatever you want to call it, because it's more natural for them, rather than there's no Scottish wine, sadly. So maybe in future. So I clearly am in the category of wine enthusiast and wine connoisseur. What about yourself, Zhanar? Where would you put yourself?
I think I'm a lifestyle experimental tourist, but I think that there is some definition between wine enthusiasts and wine professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you are a wine professional, not just enthusiast. You work with the wine, so
Mm-hmm.
I think it means that you are professional. It's like when, for example, when Italy came to Kazakhstan, they're tourists, they're wine tourists, but they wine professionals,
Mm-hmm.
not just wine enthusiasts. And I think also we have another one type. I call them taste hunters. It's people who are traveling around the world and looking for something new, something unusual, some unusual food pairings, something that they don't have in everyday life. But about myself, I think I'm lifestyle oriental tourist.
Mm-hmm. No, I think why it's put in the same category, for example, enthusiasts and connoisseurs, like connoisseurs, I think is more professional related,
Mm-hmm.
is that as a professional, I still enjoy it as an experience. I would, if even if I didn't work in wine, I would still absolutely have to try to fit it in in my experience. And I know that maybe it's a DNA that you are curious to work in wine, and then if you're curious overall, then you will continue to explore. Because I have friends who also work in wine, and they would go to destinations like Martinique that doesn't do wine, but there is rum, and they would go to rum producer, to rum plantation to explore, because it's the local beverage. So maybe wine tourism is a limited definition, because then you have to be like beverage or drink tourist. That doesn't sound sexy. That sounds really bad. But it depends the location you're visiting. So if I go to the Basque country, they have beautiful wines, but they have cider. If I go to Almaty, and I know Almaty does a lot of really nice cider now, maybe I'm more in the cider side, not on the wine
Mm-hmm.
side. So maybe wine tourism is kind of limiting itself in the word wine. But there are wine enthusiasts that do not work in wine, but they would plan the whole trip, their all vacations around visiting the regions, because how much they kind of like or admire the wine. But I agree with you that maybe for me, the most innovative and creative category is this lifestyle experiential tourists, because they would be maybe not seeking just a boring visit or just to fill in their time. They will probably look for a restaurant that's interesting in a sense. It's new, it's with a chef they want to try, and I feel that their planning and their interest in this kind of tourism, like gastronomy or wine, is really exciting, because they would find very specific things. They would explore and try to make something quite local, because they want to experience the place, the region, the country, but they would also try to find a specific activity that would be fun for them. So this is for me the category that is really super exciting to explore, because wine enthusiasts and professionals, they will continue, they're already in love with it, they will continue to visit it. That's fine. Casual visitors, you cannot program them to include it. If it's available, they will use it. So if you are making it available for them to do, to taste, to experience, they will do it. There is no kind of limit for them. But the category that is driving and kind of exploring and changing the tourism, I think, is this lifestyle and experiential tourist. That is maybe connected also with the generation trends, because the types of tourists, they do not only limit by how you treat this experience, but there is also, as I said, domestic and international tourism that is very different. And there is the generation trends. And also maybe interesting to explore, because me and you were both millennials, and we have been, I think we both saw this post going around on Instagram that millennials are the heaviest drinkers generation of all times, which you can agree or not. But there is the new generations that is more active, that they're growing up, they're earning money, and they experience and they behave as tourists in a different way. Are you seeing this as well in your work, in your job? Do you see them being different in how they consume tourism? What do you think?
Yes, yes, I see that millennials and Zoomers are very different, not only because of wine, in general. I think
Mm-hmm.
millennials is the best generation that we have, and now everything the best it's made by millennials, I think. But I think Zoomers they just don't have money for alcohol for wine. But I don't know. They really yes do not interested in wine, in alcohol, in party hard like we made in our teenagers age. Because I think millennials started to drink alcohol, I don't know, in 16, 17. It was not wine, it
Maybe
was
early, I think
vodka.
earlier.
Yeah, early, yeah, it was vodka, not wine. But millennial Zoomers now in the 16 or 17, they're like kids, not like teenagers for me, looks like. And now I see that they're more interested in not alcohol drinks like kombucha, non-alcohol beer, wine, tea. That's why now we have a lot of coffee, techno coffee, rave parties in the mornings because Zoomers are not don't like normal one parties. So now we can see that a lot of tea points in our city with a tea sommelier, the tea in wine glasses. So yes, it's very different generation.
I agree with you that it's obviously broader than just tourism in how this generation live and how they treat life in general. And I feel also how they choose what to do when they're traveling is also very different because it mirrors, well, in my case, from the wine business experience, it mirrors the overall that they want to be more aware of sustainability, of
Mm-hmm.
where things are produced, how they're produced, if it's for the better of the region, if it's natural, if it's organic. So they care more than us because we cared mostly in our kind of younger careers, younger years, so just surviving and earning the money. So we didn't have the choice of is this tomato purely biodynamic or organic?
Mm-hmm.
We just wanted the tomato. And then this generation is treating their travel, their tourism, and their consumption in a different way. And yes, you're correct. They're more into maybe not so much alcohol beverage and exploring more moderate and healthier lifestyles. Like there is juice pairing to a lot of foods in Europe. There is tea, there is non-alcoholic wine that is growing absolutely fantastic in numbers. So I think their tourism and their travel mirror how they overall how they live, how what choices they make, and it's interesting to see. And I like that there is a lot of as it should be, a lot of restaurants are adapting to this generation and trying to offer them the experiences they want. And in terms of wine tourism as well, there are some practices integrated that would interest them. Like there are yoga sessions in the vineyards, they can participate in the harvest and kind of see how the wine is made. They're also more caring about this labels like organic, sustainable. They would actually be willing to understand it, to spend maybe a little bit more money on this label and support something local, something more sustainable produced. And it's really, for them, it's really important to experience the whole atmosphere. And it's really interesting that in the regions like in Rioja, there are like a lot of Segway or electric bike tours in the vineyards. And let's be honest, on these tours, it's not millennials or boomers who go on this Segway vineyard tours. We are not,
Mm-hmm.
we drive with cars, we taste and we go. And boomers as well, they're decreasing maybe now in the amount of people who are actively traveling, but also they spend more. Boomers would go for more premium experiences. They like comfort, they like better wines. They're at this stage of life that they can spend on it. And it's also important not to forget them that they also exist and their maybe spending power is a bit more than the
Mm-hmm.
Generation Z, but you need to keep in mind that Generation Z will replace at some point, well, the boomers or later on us, and you need to also to adapt and to offer something for them to keep the trend alive, to see what it is keeping them. And I think it will be fun to try to explore from two different angles our observations and experiences. If we speak about more classic wine tourism destinations like Italy, France, Spain, because the most of wine vineyards and wine production is focused still in Europe. So naturally, the most of wine tourism in Europe is focused around these countries. And then on a different perspective, to speak about the emerging countries like Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Georgia, that have a completely different history and culture and approach to wine and gastronomy, and gonna see if there are any similarities or differences mostly. So in terms of wine tourism, I guess with your experience in Italy, as you said, you think that a lot of people, even if they don't come to Italy for wine specifically, they would still explore and face it in some ways. But do you feel like the role of kind of culture, food, storytelling is important in wine tourism experiences, in your opinion?
Yeah, yes, I think it's very important. And of course, wine and food, it's like cultural code of Italy, mixed with all this heritage, museums, art, and beautiful landscapes of Italy. And I think the most famous region in Italy, it's Tuscany. It's because of wine and food, because of wine and food storytelling. All all regions has the vineyards, but Tuscany, everybody knows Tuscany.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but in Kazakhstan now it's very popular wine from Puglia. It's not very popular as a touristic travel destination
Mm-hmm.
because it's very very south of Italy, very rural landscapes. But it's very very popular Pulian wine in Kazakhstan. I don't know why. Maybe some wine events was in Kazakhstan with wine from Puglia.
No, I'll explain too because I think it's a lot connected with the taste because still how Kazakhstan consumes wine, especially if it's red wine,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of cases, especially guys would want it to be strong in alcohol, so they need less wine to get booze, to get a little bit of intoxication from alcohol. And Pulian wines are normally at like 15, even more alcohol now. And if you
Mm.
compare it to 12 or 13, that's obviously different. Then the food, the meat, obviously in Kazakhstan, it's better paired with reds
Mm-hmm.
and the big reds. And what is also very typical for Pulian wines is there is a touch of sweetness because the grapes are very ripe because it's so sunny there. So there will be kind of jammy on the nose, and you can have a little bit of sugar on the palate. And we still love in Kazakhstan, obviously, sugar in
Mm-hmm.
everything and in wine as well. So for me, it's
No,
actually not a surprise. It's kind of a very logical match to have this style of wine very popular, and it absolutely mirrors the food and the drinking preferences. So for me, it's I'm not sure why it was not explored before. I would probably just ship all the South Italian wines, like massive containers, to Kazakhstan, like Sicilian wines, maybe Campanian wines, because this is the type of wine Kazakhstan still loves a lot.
yeah, I'm agree with you, and also I think it's also because Kazakh food, Kazakh dishes have some common things with dishes from South Italy.
Hmm.
For example, pasta genovese in Napoli looks like and tastes like beshparmak, our national
Hmm.
Kazakh dish. Maybe this is good food pairing or something like that. And I wanted to tell you that I liked your joke about if you are in Champagne region but you are not drinking,
Mm-hmm.
do you wine tourist or not? I think it's very interesting post irony or meta irony, something like that. It's like for example, if you are with a Bordeaux wine
Mm-hmm.
in Bordeaux, but in Russian it sounds better, like a я пью бордовое Бордо в Бордо. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to translate it
Yeah,
English.
no, Bordeaux
Uh,
is also a color
in
in
English. Okay.
yeah, you can call it the Bordeaux color. So you're drinking a
Uh,
Bordeaux wine.
in Bordeaux
Yeah.
region, yeah. So for me, it's kind of post-irony and meta-irony.
Also, what I find is kind of evolving in the European wine destinations is because in a lot of cases they're in it's agricultural product, so it's outside of the cities. The vineyards are
Mhm.
in the regions, in rural regions, and it's not always easy to get access to them. And I've seen that it has been not an issue, but one of the, let's say, challenges is how to bring wine tourists and people who are interested, like potentially can be interested in wine tourism, to these destinations because they're not always easy to reach. So in your case, in working with wine and gastronomy in Italy, and having Tuscany quite rural areas, or in Piemonte or in other regions in Apulia as well. Well, do you agree that it's not always easy to reach wine destinations? And how do you think it can be, I don't know, changed or improved, if at all it can?
I agree with you about vineyards in Italy that's located far away from cities in countryside, but they have very good infrastructure. Usually they have it's called like agrotourism, and they had not only wine and wine tasting, they have restaurants and some food. So if you come to this agrotourism, you can have wine pairing, wine drinking, wine tasting, and also dinner, very good dinner. It's very interesting to visit Italian agrotourism.
Mm.
And I have some funny story. It's like you joke about Champagne region. As I said, Tuscany is I think, most famous wine food region wine region in Italy. And once, one of my men who wanted to be my boyfriend invited me to to visit Tuscany for weekend and so on. And we come to Montepulciano. But it was very interesting period in my life. 7 months I didn't drink wine. So we came to Montepulciano, and wine in Montepulciano cost less than water. And he wanted to bring me some wine and to go to some vineyards. And I said, very interesting and very good, but I'm not drinking wine now. And he said, it's so strange. It's so yeah, post-ironic, because I bring you one of the most important and famous vineyard in the world, but you are not drinking wine now. How it's possible?
I am also noticing the adaptation because this challenge of going places in the vineyard, and of course, if you're seeking this full immersion, full experience of going into a small agriturismo in Tuscany or Piemonte and spend some time there in a very slow pace, tasting, eating, exploring the region, then it's obviously a great experience. But also, what I've seen in Europe coming more and more in a trend, and I think that's a good learning, is having the wine tourism offer or facilities in the cities. And this has been changing, I guess, a lot of how wine tourism is perceived in France. Because previously, in the example of Bordeaux, you should have had a car or some way to move between the chateaux because they're all outside of the city, and it can be up to even 1 hour drive to go to a wine producer, to a chateau in Bordeaux. Then you have to schedule the visit, they have to be waiting for you. So it's a lot of efforts to actually go. And what we've seen now is that there is a lot of opportunities that are starting to be open in the cities. Like in Bordeaux, they opened this amazing wine museum, Cité du Vin. So you can go learn about wine, taste, explore, and if you're still in the city, so you take a tram, you go explore wine, and then you go on with your day. Or in Champagne, in Reims, all the major champagne houses are located in the same city on the same street. Actually, not all of them, but you can walk between them, and then you can go back on a train, and you're in Paris in 40 minutes. So that's a way to kind of adapt and offer a different perspective of wine tourism, because you will not see probably the vineyard, but also how many people would actually want to go in the vineyard and kind of walk and touch the ground and explore it. No, they want to taste, they want to learn something, they want to have this touch of wine culture and storytelling and how it's in the history and culture of the place. And that's it. They don't need to have the full day experience with winemakers showing them exactly how many stainless steel tanks they have in the winery. No, that's maybe not what they're looking for. What I've seen also emerging and really being fun is different wine marathons. The most famous
Yeah,
one is the Medoc marathon, is when you run and drink. It's been highly successful. A lot of people want to take part in it. And different types of festivals and different types of people coming together and exploring and tasting. We're speaking about the countries that have long history of wine tourism and they kind of know what to do. I'm more interested to explore with you the other side, the emerging destinations like Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Georgia. Are they doing the same or are they doing something differently from the classical wine regions?
Georgia, I think, more common with European classical wine promoting wine roads. I think it's because they call themselves like a motherland of
Mm-hmm.
wine, and now Georgia very famous for orange wine, clary wine, and now in Italy it's quite popular. People looking for some orange clary wine. Yes, they have some vineyards with local food, but in compare with European countries, with Italy, France, I think Georgia more like very homemade vineyard, something very warm, not very commercial, not very
Not industrial, I would
yeah, yeah,
say.
not industrial. Ukraine, I think it's a little bit different. Yes, they have some vineyards, but it's not like in Italy that you are going to some vineyard, especially. Yes, Ukraine is drinking wine, but if you come to Kiev, and if you visit some wine shops, wine restaurants, it will be there will be a lot of wines from all over, all
Mm-hmm.
countries, not only Ukrainian. And to be honest, I don't remember some special wine, some vinoteca or wine restaurant where is only Ukrainian wine. I think Ukraine more in gastronomy and more rest interesting concepts, interesting restaurant area than in wine.
Mm-hmm.
And wine is like a part of this
Yeah, of the
gastronomy.
overall.
And in Kazakhstan, as I said, it's very. I think it's very hard to be vineyard in Kazakhstan because now we have very hard law about promoting alcohol, and they just don't have any ways to promote themselves because it's very hard. So and also because it's something like a stereotype that Kazakhstan don't have wine and local wines and yes, our country is very big, but not a lot of vineyards we have. I think it's only in south part of Kazakhstan, and I think it's Almaty, Turkestan, this area. But I don't think I don't remember that we have some vineyards or in Astana or Akmola
No.
region. Yeah.
No, I think I agree with you that Ukraine and Kazakhstan are very different from each other as well, because in Ukraine, wine has been grown in the south areas like around Odessa for centuries. It's not something you introduced. I think the interest is maybe quite new, and I really admire that even now they have a lot of wine festivals and events, and they do tastings even during the war. But I feel like now it's more focused on domestic tourism, obviously on the people who are already in Ukraine. But they did several, I've seen several wine festivals in Kiev in the recent years, and I was really shocked to admire their courage and their love of life because they're still trying to enjoy, I guess, normal things around it. And I totally agree with you that for them it's more restaurant and gastronomy and wine being part of it rather than focusing purely on wine. But I think they're doing great. And as soon as we can travel, I'd really love to explore more of it and more varieties, more regions, and how they promote it locally. In terms of Kazakhstan, yes. Well, first of all, the concept of people thinking that it's a Muslim country, the laws that are very tough on any alcohol, not only promotion but imports as well. So the
Mm.
taxation, all of it is not making it easy, and it's a small scene still, but I feel it's growing both in perception that yes, there is wine in Kazakhstan, And yes, there is gastronomy and events in Almaty, and you're probably the best person to describe that. It's also evolving pretty fast from the restaurants that I remember from my not students but more or less this time of years, when they had one restaurant that would do everything. They would have pizza, sushi, they would have barbecue, shashlik, they would have everything, and it will be the same place. And it seemed, back then it seemed quite normal, but now if I even try to think about this concept, it makes me so, I don't know, it's so weird to have all of it together. And I don't think I can explain it to any of my European friends that you can have the same restaurant that would serve you pizza, sushi, and then like borscht or something like that. But it was totally normal in Kazakhstan. But now I guess, well, you can tell us more about it, that the gastronomy scene is shifting a lot and is changing and evolving. I assume you agree with me about it.
I think in the last 7 years, our gastronomy landschaft, restaurant landschaft changed a lot in Kazakhstan, in Almaty especially. Now it's more interesting, more prepared for welcome gastro tourists. And I will explain why. For example, many years ago, or for example, 10 years ago, we had only big, very rich vibe, rich style restaurants with a very expensive Italian wine. But now we have a lot of small wine bars, local wine bars, where you can find some food pairing, interesting food pairing. For example, a couple of weeks ago, tapaseria opened in Spanish tapaseria opened in Almaty. It's very interesting because Kazakhstan is a multinational, multi-ethnical country, and we can eat and drink a lot of different food, taste of food, and everything for us is okay. I mean, we have very good tasting experience because multi-ethnical country and salty or spicy food or not spicy food, everything is okay for us. For example, we have local Korean food, Koresaram food, and now it's becoming more popular. In Kazakhstan, it always, all the time was very popular, and for us, it was like a part of Kazakh food, Kazakhstanian food.
Very traditional, yeah.
Very traditional, yes. For example, if you come to some family in Kazakhstan, you can find on the table Kazakh bishparmak, Korean salads, Russian winter salads, some jams, some Uzbek bread. And it's all our local home food. But now I can see that Koresaram food, local Korean food, Central Asian Koreans food, becoming more popular, not only in Kazakhstan, but also in other countries. And we made some event and we tried to find some food pairing between local Korean food, local Korean salads and appetizers with some Kazakhstan wine. I think it's very interesting food pairing and interesting gastro-tourism product for tourists. Because if some tourists come to Kazakhstan, they don't want to eat only Kazakh food, only beshparmak, kurdak, because it's very heavy, and not all people eat horse meat, and it's really very heavy food if you are never tried it. But we, not only Kazakhs, native Kazakhs in Kazakhstan, a lot of Korean, Russian, Ukrainian, Uzbek, Uyghur, Dungan, Germany, Polish people, Greek people in Kazakhstan, and we all influence to culinary culture of each other. So it's very interesting, and I think for Kazakhstan, I think it's our superpower in gastronomy and in general that we have so many ethnicities and we influence to each other in different ways.
Yeah, no, it's, well, hearing you, I think it's very exciting, and it's very hopefully the way that the gastro scene would kind of adapt and evolve and not try to imitate something, not to try to imitate Europe or, I don't know, America, but try to find its own way. And I completely agree with you that our strength is this mixture, the melting of the cultures and traditions, and it's so unique and it's so fun as well just to explore, because we were never limited to just one traditional cuisine. We always had this mix of whatever is the let's say, the Kazakhstan culture. And it was really nice to grow into it, because now when you kind of go and explore, as you said, your tasting experiences are so fascinating. Like, our tolerance to spicy food is amazing, so we can travel to Asia and enjoy it a lot. And I know a lot of Europeans who cannot handle spicy, and I feel very sorry for them because that's such a powerful, flavorful experience. And then obviously we have strong influence of Slavic kitchen. So if you go to Eastern Europe, you also feel at home because it's so similar. You have all the same tastes. And then yeah, like all the Asian, obviously, profile are very, very amazing. And I really love that I also see it in the European capitals, in London and in Paris as well. They're opening Central Asia restaurants. In Paris, there is opening a second one, which is called Plov and Samsa, which I love absolutely, and I wish the guys a lot of luck, and I will probably tag them somewhere in the post. That for me, it's a lot of pride that there is interest and they're opening a second restaurant in Paris, that there is demand for these experiences. And in London, there was a restaurant of Uzbek cuisine that I love absolutely. So for me, it's also curious to see that it's an exchange on a global level as well, not only inside Kazakhstan, inside Almaty.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But also, yeah, we spoke about wine with you and in general about wine industry. But in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, we have interesting examples how can be in bar industry without alcohol drinks. For example, 1 month ago here in Almaty, Kumus bar has opened. Kumis, it's horse milk. Usually, nomadic people use it like alcohol because it's very strong, very, very salty, very strong. And one businessman, one restaurateur opened Kumis bar, and they has Kumis sommelier, and they has 20 types of kumis from 20 different regions of Kazakhstan. So it's very interesting. It's like a wine industry, but
Mm-hmm.
yes, they bring a wine industry as an example, but made it own way. And also we have very interesting twist restaurant, Kazakh Azeri restaurant in Almaty. And it's Azeri cuisine also very how to say, natural for us because we have a lot of Azeri people in Kazakhstan, and this restaurant was opened by local Azeri people. So this restaurant is halal without alcohol, but they have very good tea point and tea ceremony, and they has tea sommelier who can show you very interesting and very
Combinations, yeah.
yes the combinations and ceremony and food pairing with local local food, local sweets. So it's very
Mm-hmm,
interesting
mm-hmm,
experience for tourists. I bring
mm-hmm.
some my Italian friends to this restaurant, and they was like absolutely enjoyed this evening.
I agree with you that it's so fascinating, and it goes definitely beyond just wine and beyond just alcohol beverage, that the gastronomic tourism is evolving, and it's really curious to see how it is evolving in different kind of regions of the world. And honestly, I find a lot of similarities between more classical, more advanced, developed wine regions, the European ones, with the emerging ones, because in both cases they try to find this synergy with gastronomy to promote local products, like local culture. For Italy, maybe it's like cheese, olive oil. For some countries, it's honey tasting. For Kazakhstan, it's maybe curd tasting, kumis tasting, or pairing local Korean cuisine with the wines, not only wines. And I feel that in this, it's a lot of similarities, but maybe because the regions are emerging, they do not have this long traditions or long fame, and they need to kind of start from scratch and explain to people what they can do in terms of this gastronomic experiential tourism. But I see a lot of similarities, and as well in experiential activities, because of course, if you're in a more kind of classical wine region, you would go probably to a harvest or blending stuff that they do forever. But in the regions, in the places like Ukraine, Kazakhstan, can be a lot of food and wine pairings, like you said, with the local Korean food or with any other local drinks like kumis, and the experience is very similar. You're just exploring the cultural, the local gastronomy scene. The products will differ, but for me, it's still this very cultural immersion in the local taste and flavors, and that is very similar to me. I feel like maybe in terms of sustainability and rural development, it's very different because you said that, yes, if you're wine tourism in Italy, in Tuscany, there is a big offer of agriturismo. You can stay. In France, a lot of chateaus now have a little hotel, or they try to have some accommodation that you experience like the whole, the whole vibe of staying in a vineyard, having the dinner also with the local wines. When in Kazakhstan, it's starting in a different way, which is totally okay because the scene is very different. So they have to start it maybe from the cities and providing the experiences and tastings there. And then maybe it will spread to exploring the wineries and exploring the regions more and go into these regions more, which I hope will happen. So to wrap it up, I want to ask you, what would you advise to a person who wants to travel to Kazakhstan, but maybe is afraid or doesn't know much, and the person obviously who is, I mean, interested or wanting to explore gastronomy or like overall the tourism offer in Kazakhstan?
I advise to this person to try everything that he can try in Kazakhstan. But as a wine tourist has definitions, different types of wine tourists. Also, gastronomy and food tourists also very different. Could be some person who very curious and very adventure and head of ship for him will be okay because it's our Kazakh tradition to give a head of ship as a respect to
Yes, it's
some
the
guests.
highest respect.
Highest respect, yes, but not all tourists and guests of our country ready for this experience. Not all tourists ready to try horse meat, and it's very interesting that Italians very curious gastronomical and food tourists. And I saw that Italian tourists and Italian gastronomical journalists will be very, very close in Kazakhstan to our food. But it was not like that. They was very, very open and very curious to try everything that they can try. Horse meat, local wines, local some strange food like kurt for them. But I think for Italian people, kurt it's not strange because the taste of kurt cheese it's like a pecorino. And for me, and I think for them it was okay. And of course, I advise to try not only Kazakh food, but also our local ethnical food as a lagman of Uyghurs and Dongans, manты. I advise to try kuksi or something another local Korean food. To try local Russian food, for example, akroshka, because in Soviet Union and you can find you can eat akroshka only with kvass. Kvass, it's very Soviet, very Soviet for me drink like a limonade. But in Kazakhstan, you can't find akroshka on kvass, only on kefir, ayran, tan, something like that. Shubat maybe, but not kvass. So it's very interesting how Russian food also combine with Kazakh food because we are nomadic. So we appropriate this culture from Russians because we are on the border with Russia and because we are born in this culture. And it's very interesting that Beshparmak in North Kazakhstan always in pair with some Russian salads, pickles, and all these fermented vegetables. In the south of Kazakhstan, it's a Korean salad. Kimchi, something like that. In the north of Kazakhstan, it's Russian fermented salads. So it's very interesting how we influence to each other.
It's fascinating. I love it. And yeah, I think my advice would be very short, just to be curious and to try to experiment
Open,
and yeah, and open to explore all of it, because you never know what you will like and not like unless you try. But thank you so much, Zhanar. That has been a blast. I really enjoyed the talk.
Thank you for invitation, and I'm happy that we finally made it. And sorry for my English. Let me speak from the bottom of my heart.
So I hope you now know if you're a taste hunter or a Gen Z seeking Segway tours somewhere in Amazonia. I had so much fun recording this episode. It was totally worth waiting 6 months to record with Zhanar. I think we did get carried away with slightly about speaking about food and all this experiences, but that's such a natural part of my and Janar's work and life. And it made me really miss Kazakhstan, and I hope it made you wanting to visit Kazakhstan one day. And if you do, you know there's no better person to guide you than Janar in all of the travel and experiences. Anyway, I hope this episode has left you hungry for travel and curious to explore. Thank you for being with us for almost an hour. Please like, share, subscribe on any platform you're listening to it on. I have something super exciting in store for you in the second half of the year. So stay tuned and share the love of wine. Bye.